Okay, good afternoon, everybody. We will call the committee of the whole meeting to order for June the 25th, 2025. Want to acknowledge that this meeting is being held in the Northern Rockies Administration Center, which is in the heart of the traditional territories of the Dunizaw, the Cree, and the Dene people of the Fort Nelson and Prophet River First Nation. That they are our friends, our neighbors, and our Treaty 8 partners, that we recognize the rights provided by that treaty. And we also celebrate the contributions and enduring presence of the Métis people in our region. Please be advised that this afternoon's meeting is available to the public to attend virtually, as being streamed and recorded. Are there any additions to this agenda, Council? So I think what we'll do is we will adjourn this meeting before the new business. The new business that we'll be doing today is a workshop on the community identity and signage project. And so it'll be difficult to, if we're moving around doing the dot matrix and all of those types of things as part of the workshop, it's pretty hard to follow that on the video. So we'll carry that on after we close the meeting, if that's okay with everybody. Okay, thank you. Public comment period is going to be online and wishes to comment. Okay, thank you. Everybody's okay with the agenda then? Good. So let's go first of all to the Committee of the Whole Report 1525, which is attendance at UBCM this year from September 22nd to 2020 to September 22nd to 26th, and the invites from the ministers to attend meetings. So we'll start off with that. Turn it over to staff. Scott?
Thanks, Mayor. So what you have in front of you is just some suggested meeting requests. So we have to have the meeting requests in for the minister request as of July 2nd, the next Wednesday. So a little earlier this year than the past years. So we've put a list of potential or recommended, I guess, ministries that we would put requests in for council. And suggested topics, and this is based on council's recent or initiatives and priorities and whatnot, and the potential issues that we've come across, or either over the past year or over successive years. And not limited to just doing this one thing. I just remind council is typically when you go into those meetings, the minister will ask what the ask is. What we like to do is provide requests to a minister in terms of what they could do for us to assist. Is if many times it's if we haven't had success, or we have continued success with the staff, from a staff component when we go through the ministries themselves, and we need minister assistance, or if it's an ongoing situation. So CT scanner, for example, is something that we'll continue to discuss, sure, with Minister of Health, and the Minister of this year, a little bit different with the Minister of Infrastructure. That's where usually the capital investments come in. So it's just more for discussion to council, get some direction. When we put those requests in, we typically then also have to prioritize them. So the more there are, the more difficult it is to prioritize. We typically look at the bottom ones. And there might be something that we missed on the list here. This is just based on internal dialogue and some conversations with the mayor and whatnot. So not sure how you like to proceed. We've done different routes in the past. We've gone through all the ministers and said yes or no, or when we look at the list, did you want to go through this list and see if this is adequate and if there's anything that's potentially missing? Not sure how you'd like to proceed.
I think we can go through them all. I mean, because lots of them are just a no, or unless somebody has something that I didn't, wasn't thinking of when you and I went through the list. But it reminds people of what all the ministries are, rather than just the ones that are on the report.
So would you like me to start
with A?
Start with A. Okay.
Agriculture.
Agriculture and food. We have met in the past. Always good to see Councillor Souls minister, especially if the minister back. I don't know if there's a specific ask that would be required, but I'll go back.
Yeah.
Next is the Attorney General. We do have the Attorney General on the list. What we need to confirm from an Attorney General perspective is based on some of the priorities from a policing slash I'll call it the catch and release program. We're not quite sure who the better minister to discuss it with would be, if it's the Attorney General, because it is part of their mandate letter, or the Public Safety and Solicitor General. So that's why you see the and or there potentially for that one, because we're going to confirm that we might put a request in for both, because usually provincial staff will usually come back and say they've deferred our request to this ministry based on the best minister to talk to about. So we have the Attorney General on there as part of that, and unless there's any concerns, we'll just keep that one there.
I think that's there, and I think we deliver the same message to the safety folks, right? The people, the ministry responsible for the RCMP. So I think we deliver the same message to both. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, and maybe we could check in recruitment. So like offer, like what can we do to help recruitment to our area for the RCMP? I don't know that that's currently in there, but we could maybe take a few minutes to explain what we do for help.
And we do, and we've actually been working with the local attachment, and the current sergeant actually has put some pretty neat information together locally from a local recruitment perspective, but we can absolutely ask that question again. Next on the list is sorry.
Or we could suggest other ministries to meet with.
Well, we're gonna, yeah, so you just came in just as we were explaining. We're gonna go through all of them from A to Z. So we'll go to each rather than just the ones that are on here. So when the ministry comes up that you're interested in, kick it in. Yeah.
Children and Family Development. Citizen Services. In the past, we've talked to Citizen Services, like that's been the 911 issue that we've, the others has been the call boxes that was part of that program, but nothing, I don't think specific to that we've seen. This is Citizen Services, Education and Childcare. Okay. Emergency Management and Climate Readiness. I mean, obviously we got lots occurring, but there's nothing specific that we've discussed internally that we'd as staff or a council would want to discuss with the minister, just specific to an ask for any assistance from the minister. Rain.
Yeah.
That might be environment. Energy and Climate Solutions. We have I didn't put Energy and Climate Solutions on there. So we should talk about Energy and Climate Solutions. Minister of Energy.
So he's responsible for the BC Energy Regulator. So we should be making him aware of well, they're not concerns yet, but that our ideas of reclamating roads out in the rural areas. And you know, their legislation says that when they start putting oil fields to bed, the roads go to bed as well. And there's some significant roads out there. And we need to be talking about whether those roads become part of the municipality, particularly the major ones. It's not the roads into the leases that I'm concerned about. It's those main roads, SYD, you know, the Comey Road, those roads, the Cottrell Road. Those are significant roads in our region that people are using, not just for oil and gas, but potential access for fire, forestry in the future. And so we should start a dialogue somewhere with respect to what's happening around those roads. And I think it's probably energy that's responsible.
It was actually an upset on my part. So when I look at the list, I'm like, I know I put that in there, but I didn't actually stick the ministry in there. I combined it with development innovation.
Yeah.
So that's where.
And then secondary to that is the discussion that we're having with respect to collection of taxes from those taxpayers who are under the jurisdiction of the Ministry of Energy, right? So it's not his particular concern or responsibility as part of his, but we should be letting him know that it's a concern to us.
Yeah.
And you know, as many of these, I'll call them dirt ministries that have anything to do with the rural areas where we tax because of our situation, we should be letting them know that we're looking for their support when it comes time to open a letters patent to see if we could do something about that.
Yeah.
The other area of responsibility for that ministry is BC Hydro. as a utility regulation division.
Yeah, I don't know if we're ready. I mean, from my perspective, I don't know if we're ready to go to the ministry yet with respect to the firework, because they are doing some stuff. Although they resisted our letter. They actually sent 3 crews and a supervisor here to actually get working on it. So, you know, they're saying one thing and doing something different, and, you know, whether it was because we copied further up inside, but so far we're seeing some action from BC Hydro, and I don't know, my feeling is that I'm not ready to go to the minister saying that they're not responding.
Yeah.
Might not be enough, but until we actually determine that, we work, because they, you know, their hand is out with respect to helping us do our plan. So, you know, I don't wanna, it's that fine balance of upsetting them and at the same time trying to work with them, so. And as far as electricity goes, you know, they're building that new generator out there. They're, you know, the diesel generator, so the backup and having assurance of power seems to be, you know, we seem to be gaining there, so. So unless anybody else has something to say about hydro, I'm comfortable just leaving them for now. Because we're gonna talk to them specifically, right?
Yeah, there's a request
Yeah.
that's gone out to Hydro
Right.
already, because they had the agencies, specific agencies will have their own request mechanism, so that went out last Thursday.
Okay.
Yeah. And that was specifically to talk about just to have that continued dialogue with the right of way, clearing. Okay, environment and parks. So in the past.
So who's responsible for the Cascadene process?
That would be Walrus, Waterlands. Resources.
But these guys are responsible for the 30/30, or at least they're part of it. We should be making them aware in 15 minutes that this is a bigger issue, this. You know, because they're responsible for Caribou, right?
Caribou would be.
Walrus
Caribou
as well?
was Forestry and Walrus, right, was Caribou, because that it's split up with the Walrus, I think, right?
Walrus under the provincial caribou program.
Yeah.
Right. And who looks after
Would be the
the MK? Yeah, yeah. So we should we should be talking about them, about our nervousness and concern about this process happening as quickly as it is. And, you know, we're looking for the process to slow down. They're asking for public comments from all the highway operators in their busiest season. And they got like a month or 2 months or something to
But that's what
respond.
Walrus asking for that though.
Yeah, but we should still be making.
No, absolutely. I'm just
environmental-
saying like when we put the request in, if we make the statement specific to what the process is, they will defer us to Walrus.
Yeah,
right?
and
all.
that's fine, but I still want them to understand that the cumulative effect here, right, across environments, activities and Walrus's activities is pinching us down to where we almost have no access left.
Yeah.
So, you know, you can do that in 15 minutes. Is there an ask there? Yeah, their ask is to help us when we're asking Walrus to slow this thing
Yep.
down.
Yep. Yep.
Okay.
For sure.
The one thing that was under Parks
Mike?
last year, oh, sorry. The one thing that was under Parks last year was the additional Muncho Lake Park opening. The
Oh, yeah.
third
follow-
campground.
Follow up
Which
on
is
that, because
still
they
not
didn't do
open.
that.
Yeah.
So we should follow up on that as well, I suppose.
Yeah. Yeah, because I think we've been updated by staff, right? With the process.
They're essentially doing their environmental assessments to determine the cost of and what services they want to provide on that parcel.
I think they've been doing that for a fair length of time.
They have.
Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah, I think there's also the referral piece with an engagement piece on the First Nation side too. That's been creating some delays or process. Okay.
Well, and I think it's maybe important to highlight that at the time that it's my understanding that at the time the province bought that campground, there was a private organization that wanted to purchase it. And the province purchased it instead, and had the private business been successful in purchasing it, it would have been open years and years and years ago, so. Yeah,
Okay. Finance.
So are they, will they have anything to do with the letters patent and opening it up and?
Not, well, that's a good question. We have the approach, I think, that we possibly should continue on with is through the municipal affairs, because they're the ones that have the direct involvement with that piece. And with them, because when we were dealing with delinquent taxes in the past, the avenue we took previously with delinquent taxes was looking for a mechanism for us to be able to do something, which we realize now that, well, not realize now, through that process, there's no mechanism that we can apply to do that. And those conversations were primarily with municipal affairs. Besides, they would bring in the appropriate, because we've had conversations with the energy regulator already. We've met with them specifically. We've met previously with the energy minister, for example, as part of that process, and all the players. But the thought process here is continue to work with municipal affairs, because they're the ones would be like most likely the lead ministry on this process, and then would bring in their required other ministries dependent on this and the situation, right? So from a taxation perspective, they might bring in finance when we have questions, because we've already discussed with staff. This is because besides supporting the process with the ministry, we're still navigating with municipal affairs ministry regarding what some options might be from a taxation perspective in the rural areas, in the industrial areas, right?
So haven't we landed on the fact that really the only way that this is gonna work is if they collect it? Haven't we landed on, isn't that the answer?
Well, that's what our answer is.
Yeah.
So we've gone back to municipal affairs to say, what are the options? Because of course there's legislation in terms of where that sits. So what we don't know now is it something that can just be applied, or is it cracking open the letters? What does that look like? Right.
So wouldn't the Ministry of Finance be the ones responsible for actually doing the collection? I mean, shouldn't we bring them in sooner rather than later, at least letting them know that
If
this
council
is,
wishes, I don't
our,
have a good answer for that. I
Yeah.
don't know. I really don't know what that would look like, because when we had the conversations, I mean, when you get entangled, for lack of better words, in that web of legislation and various sections of legislation, I really don't have a good answer for that. So if it's a conversation with finance to say, these are the challenges we're having.
yeah, here's our solution.
Yeah.
And it involves you, and
So
we're working with ministry,
Yeah.
and maybe when you put the request in, they come together and we meet together. I don't know. Well, maybe
Sure.
not, because they don't have, yeah, okay. Yeah, that's assuming that they'd be way too efficient. Yeah, they have different.
We have all kinds of ideas how things should happen and
Yeah.
materialize,
I mean,
what we think, but I mean.
Here I am saying that I'm a proponent that we should only talk to 3 ministers when we're down there, and here I am saying.
that's where I
So-
was just gonna interrupt.
Yeah,
so,
I'm
like,
arguing against my own philosophies, except that, if it's a full court press and you want these ministries are gonna be coming in, they need to be aware at some point. Right? And this is our opportunity to, and are we asking them to do anything? No, we're putting on notice that we think that this is our solution to this. We're coming with a problem. Here's our solution. You're involved with it. If they just put us off to Ministry of, because ultimately the tax has to be collected. So municipal affairs eventually is just gonna they'll do the letters patent, but they're gonna handle the process.
Well, the
handle
question,
process.
it's not, and herein lies, I mean, it's not around the taxation component in terms of the taxes being collected. It's regarding the fact that taxes that can't be collected. And what can the province do? Right? So I don't know. So I guess I don't know if that's coming from the finance end or municipal affairs, because besides we could hand over the process. Well, I said we could. A solution could be handing over the process for collecting taxes and have the province do it. Because they do it for all the regional districts. Our letters patent have us doing it. The challenge is that the province, quite frankly, and we'll pick on PRD, has the same issue with uncollectible taxes and the PRD as we have with uncollectible taxes in the NRM. The difference is that the scale is much different, right? In terms of how it impacts us as an organization versus them. So the request or the solution that's been presented to municipal affairs is that the province makes us whole. Because the PRD, for example, doesn't feel the impact of those uncollected taxes. The province essentially, from our understanding, is, for lack of a better word, is eating it.
So
But-
can I make a suggestion?
Sure.
So just like I very much agree with you that I don't want to see us do the 15 ministers. Like, I don't even know if we would get that. So part of me says the more requests that we put in, and then the less likely we're gonna be that we're gonna get all of them. So that's my one concern, is if we have too many requests in. And then my second point is this isn't necessarily our only opportunity to meet with ministers either, right? Like, we can take a strategic direction and let's just take the tax file and arrange meetings with those ministers outside of UBCM, all of them that are involved. It doesn't have to be at UBCM. We'll go down for the mayor and staff or whoever goes down to deal with that particular file, right? And so it doesn't all have to just happen at UBCM. Like, that's what the NCLGA does. Like, they meet with ministers at UBCM, but then they have a day or 2 days or 5 days, however many days that they can get, and they'll meet with a whole suite of ministers. And that's outside of UBCM. So I would just encourage us to pick the ones that we feel would be the most strategically advantageous for us at UBCM, as opposed to trying to get all of them.
Good point.
So back to the
So
original.
leave
portion.
finance out then. For now.
My recommendation from an approach perspective is they asked for municipal affairs, which has already had conversation with staff, and I think the approach I think is appropriate with them need to be appropriate to minister, because we got a good, the staff has been receptive to the discussions, right? We of course, things work at glacial speed, so they never work fast enough for us, but it's, there wasn't a no, there wasn't like, we'll think about it, was no, we'll look at what that looks like and what the process looks like. The last time we had conversations around the delinquent tax piece a number of years ago was a bit of a different approach in terms of what we thought a solution would be, because at that time we were getting responses back that we actually had some mechanism to be able to deal with it. Which we obviously don't today. We don't, that's not the case today, but at the time, our conversation with municipal affairs branched out, and then it wasn't just limited to UBCM, to Councillor Goering's point. It was discussions that happened routinely and brought the various organizations into those discussions, which finance at the time was one of them, but we had very limited conversations, quite frankly, at the time with finance. But they were brought in, but that's where BCER were brought in, for Minister of Forest were brought in, because technically they're the leaseholders, but they're delegating that authority to BCER. So the thought is that if we broach that with municipal affairs, to ask for their help in navigating through this, to pull those groups together, and if we need to, because we've already made the comment that if we need to pack a suitcase and head to Victoria, we'll do that, because it's a big enough issue, right? So anyhow. So finance, good for now. Okay. I'll add to that. What we can do as part of this, though, is we can also reach out from a ministry perspective and discuss stuff with staff, because we have the ability, which isn't, those requests don't go until August, but we can have some sidebar conversations with staff to start prepping that if need be too, which we'll probably do that. Ministry of Health is on the list. What we have for topics was just general, basically health services in community. Sorry? Oh, I missed forestry. My bad. Forestry. I'll go back up. Forestry, Minister of Forest.
Resource rights.
Forestry, in light of the conversation that was just had regarding the extra UBCM, outside of UBCM meetings, I was reminded of some of our previous UBCMs where we talked to every single minister in the room about the rail line. And everyone that we could talk to about the railway, we talked to about the railway I remember meeting a bunch of us cornered Premier Horgan at the time in the lobby on his way through and talked to him about the rail line and how, because that was affecting a lot of different facets of our planning and so on. So I see this issue of Walrus and being the discussion point for the Musqueam as a really limiting factor too. If you don't have the forestry, and like, I'd like to hear, we've listened to both at the forestry forum in Prince George, where the resource forum, was the forestry forum, Covey, sorry, where we listened to minister and the premier both talk and mention Fort Nelson as a wood supply in the world of forestry and the need to ramp up forestry in the province of BC. And yet here we have a Walrus on the side. I mean, talking about the Musqueam, the Casca and the relationship, the land use planning. And on the other side, we have the wildfire branch that is the other. And like I described the other day of us being sandwiched into a very small map, that's completely, that completely negates the idea of having a forest industry at all. And so I'd like the forest minister, I'd like to have a discussion with him. He's expressed his willingness to come here and visit. And that's maybe the way we need to have the meeting, but to come and visit and ask him to explain how he sees us being a wood supply for a starving wood province. And then at the same time, cut most of it out of the map. Like we need that discussion.
Yeah.
Somewhere.
Councilor Roper?
I agree that we should prioritize a meeting with the Ministry of Forests. We've seen wildfires decimate our forests, and there's concerns coming from the community about the future of our annual allowable cut. And we should really be making sure, communicating that any future decisions with the annual allowable cut are going to prioritize local economic development and support that local added processing, which is what we're trying to do. But we're kind of heading towards a situation where we're going to be doing nothing but exporting logs. And I don't think that's going to benefit the region. So I think we should definitely plan to at least make a request. I'd be remiss if we didn't at least request it.
Yeah, so I'm really hoping that he's here in the first couple of weeks in July. They haven't contacted us yet, but we've seen a rash of senior regional forestry people come through here in the last couple of weeks. I suspect they're getting ready for I sense they're trying to feel whether or not what we're going to talk to the minister or what he's going to face when he gets here. So hopefully we'll get a meeting with him here. If not, then certainly we need to be talking to UBCM about this dichotomy. They want wood, but yet we're hearing about everything being locked up. So somewhere there's got to be some middle ground there, or some clarification, at least from the government, of what they plan for this region. So yeah, so forestry is in, particularly around land use planning, I think.
Yep. And we'll confirm on the forestry just to see if it makes sense from that resource road component too, just from that.
Yeah.
That's the ministry that lists resource roads and under their mandate.
But managed by.
But
And
managed-
I don't know that the oil patch roads are.
Most of the forest roads are now converted over to oil and gas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that,
Which will,
Like the pipeline bypass. is
Yeah.
still
Yeah.
peak renewables, for example.
yeah,
So there are still some. forest.
but you're
Yeah.
talking things like Sid Road and the
Sid,
more
Comey.
of the major resource roads, which will
Which
land
is
under
a
energy.
split. There's a
energy
split
mines.
between them, right?
Yeah, because that's who managed them today. And that's some of the interesting dynamics with the way
Yeah.
those roads works, but. Okay, now Minister of Health, we have local health services on that list. And we have travel in terms of traveling for health services to discuss some of the initiatives or discussions that have occurred to help mitigate the impact on the locals when they have to travel for health services from a financial perspective. And then we have the CT scanner on there, which most likely the majority of the CT scanner discussion is more around. Because we're already been advised that it's part of the service delivery that for the hospital, or would be for our hospitals. From a capital perspective, it's infrastructure is
It
where
would be
that's-
interesting though to do a comparison onto why we have to pay such a large portion when other hospitals don't.
From the percentage from the, yeah, and that's information too, that's that letter that's gone to the both ministers, Ma and Minister of Health.
But if we're
regarding-
meeting with them and like,
Yeah.
we would reiterate that. Well, we want.
It comes, and that's like, and it comes down, that's a question regarding it's the funding piece, it's the funding model when it comes from the ministries, right? Like Northern Health doesn't have the funds, it's the right question, it's, sorry?
It's the side deals.
Well, it's
Some
those, but those,
hospitals can get less
and
percentage.
those are the deals that come through previously, when I say the Ministry of Health, and the question now is it Ministry of Health and or Ministry of Infrastructure, right? Because again, it comes to the funding and where the province steps in and says, we need to have that service here, or we need that improved facility here, and you know, the district, the hospital district, whichever area that is, says we don't have the ability to fund that amount. But, and the province needs a service, so they
Well-
step up and make this idea.
The ask with them is this funding assurance, right? Because they're telling us that 2 million of it is coming from them.
Yeah.
Right? From
Well,
health
that's Northern Health.
or Northern Health, but where do they get their money from?
Yeah,
right?
so the challenge with, and of course, Northern Health would be on the list to have a conversation. The challenge with Northern Health is having as part of those discussions now is that's our understanding that they're just working off of a status quo funding model or funding letter from last year. They haven't even received, last time we chatted with them, they don't even have their funding letter yet from the Minister of Health.
I don't want to belabor the point because like we can go round and round and round and round, but you know, when the Fort St. John got a new CT scanner, did that hospital have to pay X amount of dollars too? Like, it's just that fairness about, you know, that we're all paying the same amount. Are we like, or are we not? Or
Well, the Peace River Regional District helped pay for that at 40%. Same as their hospital, because it went in with the new hospital and they paid 40% of that hospital. And they paid 40% of the hospital that's going into Dawson Creek. So they've been paying that. So, but there are
but
others,
then the Prince George
Yes.
is not paying the.
yeah, they're at 15%, but
Yeah.
those are some pretty major projects that they're talking about. And I don't know about their smaller.
Anyway,
Yeah,
and yeah,
yeah.
I mean, we could just get married, but anyways, I think it's important that we make that point. And then the other thing that I wanted to bring up is, the Villar's Air project. Like, I know we're talking about, was that Thunder?
Yeah.
Yeah, I know we're talking about non-emergency medical travel, but I don't want to lose the point about that specific project, the Villar's Air project, and how it's all set to go, but we have no funding and can't find any funding. And the health authority has elected to not use it for cancer care treatment because then funding would have been included, but they've decided, not in partnership with us, but the health authority themselves decided that they would go ahead with this project, but only for CT scans. And there's no funding associated with that travel. So
Hmm.
just needing to make that point.
Yeah, and I think making the point and having an ask and a suggestion, because we have 15 minutes. Maybe the ask is, can they commit to meeting with us after UBCM to discuss what some opportunities are, as I can see, because I think the point we really want to raise is the challenges that we have as a community to access healthcare, given our rural
Yeah.
remote location.
Yes.
And how, and the fact that fill the gap when it comes to travel, but you don't even have the travel if the service is here, i.e. CT scanner. And then point that you've made in the past, Council Growing, then is the amount of funds that are being expensed individually by locals to get that service.
Yeah.
Right.
That's the argument. that
And
we-
to me,
To
that's.
both of them.
Yeah, and then ask for that meeting, and because the 15-minute ask, we're not gonna solve anything. We're gonna get lots of tick the boxes, of course, and we'll do.
But
this
we
and
do
take it, right?
submit background information
Oh,
with the
absolutely.
request. So
Yeah,
that's all
yeah,
I'm saying.
Yeah,
is that
absolutely.
That
We'll-
needs to be
We
included.
would
in-
have all that in there. Yes, no,
And we'll
guaranteed.
hope that they
Yeah,
read it.
yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
thanks.
Housing and municipal affairs. So we required to meet with them at a staff level and a ministry level specific to the IDCA. And of course, the other items on that list is specific to the uncollectible taxes issue that we have and the recent challenges or challenges that we've seen, which were unforeseen at the when we became a regional municipality that we're seeing now. And it's basically the continued discussion around the opportunity to open the letters patent to look at dealing with some of those items and how we can rectify them in the future. The Fire Safety Act's another example where we're dealing with a situation where we're required to have some unrealistic approach in terms of dealing with the new legislation because we have municipality in our name and we're deemed as being a regional municipality. Right, so.
Go ahead.
Would this be the place where we would talk about how seniors housing? And specifically, like an extended care ward, like a dementia ward, like currently we have absolutely no facility at all. So if our loved ones are experiencing that, then they have to be sent out of the community. So would this be the appropriate ministry?
Would it be MEH or would it be, or would it be health? Right. But I mean, I think housing's housing, I guess we could argue. I mean, I think we can request, I think we could probably
If
specify.
putting in a request anyways, it might be something that we talk about.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah. Okay. Indigenous relations and reconciliation. You didn't see anything specific with that one. Infrastructure, obviously specific to the CT scanner. Anything else on that one? And that's where we'd also would have the conversation on the funding piece also, because that's from the Northern Health Regional Hospital districts within Northern Health. That's been the discussion. That's the minister we met with specifically to deal with the funding model and the inconsistencies within the funding model, which then could be argued they're inequitable also, right? Jobs, economic development, and innovation. We have that one around this economic renewal. I have resource roads, but that's the wrong one.
Yeah.
And the rail infrastructure. And I guess the question on the rail infrastructure, we have done that in the past is, do we look at doing a full court press on rail infrastructure? The challenge we've run into and what we're getting to learn, especially with this government, with the NDP's government, since they've been in power and got past the first couple of years of UBCM, is that they're very good at deferring requests when you flagging things that this is not the ministry. Why are you asking this? We're deferring to this. And so we have this other stuff to talk about. So it's a bit of a strategic approach in what we request. Sometimes we just, because we say rail, they're going to say rail's federal. It's the reason why we don't put the Ministry of Transportation also. But I think it's wise to try to attempt a bit of a full court press on the rail side too, because in the absence of rail, how do you get any kind of resources to market, especially on, quite frankly, we'd be limited to export logs from a forestry perspective if we don't have adequate rail to deal with, to assist with the manufacturing process of forestry, right? So is there anything else are we good with the jobs, economic development? And was there anything else you want to add to that list? Okay. Labor minister, there's nothing that we could think of on that one on our end. Mining and critical minerals.
Yeah.
What's that?
We're not talking about past.
Yeah. Post-secondary education and future skills. Public safety and solicitor general, what we currently have on that list is the policing component. We've got the discussion regarding the potential or looking to have highway patrol integrated into, or those particular positions integrated into the detachment.
General duty.
Into general duty. Especially considering the recruitment challenges of vacancies just from a policing perspective. And the example that was brought up with Northern Rockies Lodge is a perfect example of the challenges that we, from a policing perspective, we have with the region and the vastness of the region. Um. Anything else on that one there from the? We've got social development and poverty reduction. Tourism, arts, culture and sport,
No specifics.
transportation and transit. In the past, we've made a stab at the rail on that one. They keep just basically just shutting us down because they don't deal with rail.
I don't know if that would be, and again, we don't necessarily need a meeting, I guess, but in terms of our, lack of transportation to exit the region, like our bus service and our, I don't know how our current airline, if they've been more reliable, I haven't heard anything lately, but it would be, I don't know whether that would be the ministry to talk about that, like. And I don't necessarily think we should have a meeting, but it might be something that we send a letter to, or I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah, we're still waiting for word on, the follow-up, whether we were gonna have a discussion with Central Mountain Air and.
I think we're still waiting for them to come back to us now.
Yeah.
They have come back just recently?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, we'll wait to see what they've got to say, I think, before we decide where to go next.
They've come back to Krista and I met with them to talk about marketing opportunities, so just increasing their profile in Fort Nelson to include ridership. but
Yeah.
Nothing from the conversation that you and I had around some of those
Yeah.
supply chain issues. and things.
Yeah.
The other thing on transportation, that's Modi, right? So.
Oh, yeah.
So what's hanging out there is the cleanup of the Alaska Highway through the
Yeah.
fires,
Yeah.
right? So we should request a meeting, put that on as a topic. If they give it to us and they do actually clean up, we can just go in there and say, thanks very much for doing that.
Yeah.
Right? If
Okay.
they don't, then we've got to put the pressure on them to clean up that right away.
Yeah.
Cause it's a mess right now.
Yeah, and when you say clean up, Mary, it's specific
Logs.
to the logs that are.
Logs
the
laying on the
stuff?
side of
Yeah.
the road
Yeah.
from the fire, through the fire area,
Yeah, okay.
cause they're a hazard.
Yeah, we haven't had an opportunity to circle back with wildfire or the feds to figure out what the
Yeah.
plan is, because there might very well be a
Yeah,
plan.
and the other is request from Toad River about just the brushing back.
Yeah.
Right, because there's areas along there where the brush is right down to the side of the road. And,
Yeah.
and they can't mow it like they can these others just because of the terrain. Right, so we know that comes down to a costing issue. With, they gotta put a hoe in there with some kind of a buncher to, it's gotta be done mechanically.
Yeah.
It can't be done with pulling a cutter behind a tractor.
I'll be interested to see what the response is to that one, just because of the hot potato of the Alaska Highway is when it comes to, even though we know the right of way is Modi.
Yeah.
I'd be putting my money on the fact they're gonna defer to the feds.
Well-
But we'll ask a question and get. the
Yeah, and if it gets
anyway.
done before then,
Yeah.
because you put a plug in there with them about, and they said it was a 2-year cycle, right?
Yeah, that was
Yeah,
a
it's a
Fed.
2-year cycle with the tractors, but not necessarily with
That's
anything
Fed.
more than that. Yeah.
That's more follow-up now since the discussion, since the drive up to Saturday, that's more discussion with Darcy and
Yeah.
regarding what's the scope of work? Cause
Yeah.
my gut's gonna tell me the scope of work is just your typical mowing. It's not actually widening that right away.
Yeah, so if we don't ask for a meeting now, there's no opportunity to ask for it later,
That's right.
to deal with that topic.
And water, land and natural resources, we have that on the list already to discuss the
Cascade,
Casca BC land management.
the whole land management issues.
And that's a list. And then other than that, we've got the request in for BC Hydro. It's already in. And I didn't see anything yet from Northern Health specific to a request for them. But usually we receive something outside of that to have the discussion with Northern Health.
Yeah, so that can come to one of our regular meetings then.
Yeah, if you,
Right.
yeah. Well, those, I guess, the question is, we get it, is council in favor? Do you want to make the decision on a regular meeting? Is that what you'd rather do, or?
Well, whenever they send us a letter saying, yeah.
Okay.
Right, because we have to determine what it is we're gonna talk to them about.
Okay.
And
There's
I think we're already gone past them to the ministry on a lot of this stuff.
Yeah. Jay, have we received anything you're aware from Northern Health yet? I don't recall seeing anything yet. Okay.
I was just gonna mention, there's also that newly appointed Minister of State for Local Government and Rural Communities. the intention of that being that they liaise with local governments and provide advice and recommendations to cabinet from a rural perspective. So I'm not sure if there's value in, again, maybe not a meeting request, but correspondence or copying that person when we're writing about things like the Casca land use plan and items like that that may not be kind of front of mind for some of the more urban decision makers.
Was that similar to what Raleigh Russell did before?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think they went from parliamentary secretaries to now they're called ministers of state.
Okay. And that one falls underneath municipal affairs.
It's listed as an independent, it's as an independent division within the provincial appointment book, but I think, yeah, I think you're right. It's a
I think it's.
section under MAH or M, whatever
Yeah.
that ministry is.
Municipal affairs and housing.
Yeah.
I think, yeah, so I think we just keep copying them on the different things that we're doing. That's it? Okay. That's enough, isn't it?
Well,
That's a workload, for sure.
well, like I said, yeah, we prioritize based on the discussion we have and then we see what we get back and we go from there. And then we typically don't know. I mean, in the past, it's been first, second week, September. It's really up close to the actual conference before you actually confirmations. But what we'll do is as we go through this process here, then we'll determine our approach even with the staff component. Because we have staff meetings on the side too, that we try to, just from a strategic approach in terms of how we, get the message across.
Okay. With that, then, okay, I'll adjourn the meeting